Madam Speaker, let me just say, I generally like to listen to my learned friend from San Fernando West. But he lost me, and I'm sure he lost many, when he started by castigating unfairly the leader of the opposition, when certainly in her earlier parts of her remarks this morning, she referenced an issue of $4.4 billion plus, and she said US dollars. And I am certain my learned friend, as honorable as he is, must have left the chamber. He might have been disturbed by the member, or the Minister of Finance or something, when in fact he did not hear the honorable leader of the opposition correct herself on the record of Hansard. And for those who may not have listened in, the contribution of a learned friend as he opened would have sounded damning, as they are wont to, on members of the opposition, as if they give untruths, as if they lie, and as everything unholy under the sun. But what is the truth? There was an error which was corrected, admitted by the leader of the opposition. I ask on the other side, who on your side has never erred? Who on your side has come forward and said, we made a mistake? That is one of the hallmarks of the PNM. They're wrong, and they're strong, and they go down as if all that they do is good and noble. Unfortunately, in this country, as divided as the politics is, as divided as our people have become, it is necessary sometimes to sift through a lot of the propaganda so that we get down to the essential truths. The Curtis Mattis computer or TV you spoke about, learned Attorney General. If you complimented my successor in the ministry, well, we inherited that Curtis Mattis from her. But what is more disturbing is that that old building that we were occupying and we made tremendous use of, and if the member for Aruka will tell you that sometimes over 2,000 persons would visit that building to conduct their daily business. What we met when we arrived, I could tell you this, and I remember it clearly because I had been told that when we were sworning, after then, we were at Office of the Prime Minister, and then we'd go to relevant ministries, and that the permanent secretaries would generally have a little reception for you there. And as we drove into the back, I saw an old tent with chairs strewn about, and I thought, oh my God, the party had, you know, we had run late, and everything had been, it bust, basically. When I walked into the ministry, you got that smell of an old hospital, of rotting paper and so. The place was as dank and as dismal as you could ever imagine. And what that shed outside was for the population who came there, the hundreds of them, who were never properly accommodated. And it troubles me to have to go through all the details again, but just to put things in perspective, that ministry would entertain persons from Cedras to Scarborough, from Toko to Guayari, because they did not have access to many of the functions in different offices throughout the length and breadth of this country. So we had to fix all of that. And to fast forward to let you know, and I'm sure if my lady had the pleasure of visiting the ministry after we had taken office, within the first year or so, we were able to distribute documents in a matter of minutes and not of months and of years. That is a notorious fact in the country. And the reason I put this in the context is that we had to use this building, not because we didn't want to go to the Ministry of Legal Affairs Towers, you know. The hundreds of millions of dollars that the former government had spent building those towers, you know what happened? When we took keys for that, we also took a list of 200 defects in the building. 200 defects that had to be repaired, had to be brought up to standard before anybody could even consider outfitting, before anybody could consider occupying. Now, sometimes I wonder, if when we are born, we believe that all that Trinidad and Tobago is today came about by a wish, by a fantasy, or if there had not been generations that had come before us and worked hard and had brought us to a stage and we moved to the next step. I know my friend from San Fernando West is not a greedy man. Some may say otherwise, but I will say no. Sometimes you plant a seed. You have to nurture it, put it in the right ground, water it, ensure it gets proper sunlight, and the plant slowly grows, ultimately to a point where it may start to bear fruit. Sometimes the fruit may be yet green. And then you know this, the thing in this country with the zabuka. When you think it's a little too green, the fellow who is ready to come and pick it and find so. I would not accuse my learned friend from San Fernando West of being a pretty larcenist. I will not do that. But to say, without reflection, that the millions of records that he was able to transfer from one building to the other, we had prepared them. They were there, right? To speak of the millions of documents that had been digitized, shamelessly, I wondered what happened, and I congratulate my learned friend, yeah? But what was the mindset of administrations prior? When we walked into the registry, I told you that rotting smell we got. You know what it was? The smell of deeds rotting literally in the vault. We went in there, and there's a root of title that you require, minimum 20 years. And there were many older documents that we dared not touch, because as you touched them, they fell apart. So we took a decision early in the proceedings that we needed to ensure we secured those documents, because that might be the only document showing ownership in property. To that end, it was not a simple thing. It's not a matter of grabbing it and photocopying it. Specialized equipment to preserve the old and rotting paper needed to be acquired. Expertise to do these things were necessary. And my friend well knows that we required international assistance to do that, funding and equipment and a host of things. And the ministry, while we were there, had continued that progress right up until the learned friend had the great honor of receiving all of the work that we had done. So it is not as if by the snap of his finger it happened. But I could understand why he will want to believe that, because the nitty-gritty is what matters, and the devil is in the details. And all of the work that we had done then, I am grateful that he was able to take some credit for it, because I want the country to be better. But we have done so much, and it is really unfair to suggest that he met things in decay. What I will also tell you is that we took a decision where we opened offices throughout the length and breadth of this country. In every regional corporation, we took an office so that we will not have our citizens having the torture of leaving Cedros to come to Port of Spain. The first office we opened was in Point Fortin. We opened in Diego Martin. We opened in Arima. We opened in Sangre Grande. We opened in Pinal. We opened in Chaguanas. And all of the regional corporations.
Acknowledge it.
Right? And we are grateful to the regional corporations for having donated an office to us free of charge. And we used staff who were at the ministries and located them there. We put internet and computers so our population had easy and quick access. What we also did is that we allowed and I have to fast track, there was so much that had been done. The registrar and a team went to different parts of this world, in London, in New York, in Toronto, and some of the other centers, and worked with the high commissions and embassies there so that citizens need not have come back to Trinidad for certain documents. We would have been able to, when they apply online, we were able to mail it out to them directly, free of charge for your first document. There were times when interviews would have been required. For instance, where there was a query on your identity or whatever. So we put Skyping in those places so that they need not have come to Trinidad. Because one of the main problems that we had found was that many of our citizens had gone into America, as an example, and they had not yet received their papers. This was pre-Trump days, of course. And sometimes their passport would have expired. And in America, to cash a check, you sometimes needed 2 forms of ID. If your passport is expired and you don't have a passport, you wouldn't be able to cash a check. And sometimes to get a passport, you have to come to Trinidad, but your passport expired. So what did we do? We took a very people-centered approach to this thing. And our foundation in government, the reason I came and all of my colleagues who I worked with, was always about finding the problems of the people and fixing them. Some of which were expensive and others were not that much, like this example, but it meant a whole lot to hundreds and thousands of our citizens who could not come home, and simple things like that. I could go through the rituals of telling you that one morning I received a call, and I'm very proud actually about this simple thing. When persons will line up in their dozens, sometimes in their hundreds, from early in the morning, whether it is rainy or just beautiful weather. And we took a decision that whatever any one of our citizens came to our offices, it would be open and be allowed in. We created a whole suite, well comforted with proper chairs and coffee and biscuit and water and so. So it was a people's ministry. What we did in San Fernando too is that we put all of the necessary services in that, and it became a full-fledged ministry. We did the same in Arima, and certainly we strengthened Tobago in our offices there. But what happened, I don't know, and I know my little friend, as busy as he is as Attorney General. Leoto Street, is that in San Fernando West, my friend? Yeah. Yes, it is. We got disturbing reports from many of our citizens in this last year or two. You're moving, finally. Because when we took office in 2010, we inherited Leoto Street. It was congested. It was in a state of dismal disarray. If you thought Port of Spain was bad, it is far worse. And especially you find that often in things south of the Caroni Bridge, where government institutions are allowed to rot. And we took steps and we upgraded it dramatically because we were tied in to a lease. We were tied in and we could not have moved. We would have lost a lot of money. And we were hopeful then to have better buildings. And I'm happy to hear my learned friend has finally unleashed himself from that lease, because that building was wholly inadequate. I can't remember when it was that they first took occupation of that place, because there's no car park. And in fact, I looked at a video a little while ago of the hundreds of citizens who have to be out in a shed, just like we had it up here, but there was no room to do better for them. I heard there was a rat infestation not long ago, and a host of horrific experiences that people have, where sometimes they return 3-4 days before they could get documents, because it is the one office in South now that could help them. And hundreds will go, and of course the staff can accommodate only so many in one day. And you have to return day after day, and we go through this thing like when you're a long time, you have to go to American Embassy, and people reaching there 3-4 o'clock just to get a space that day. Oh God, in this modern day. So when we started the process of making applications on your computer, the laptops that we gave to our children wasn't just meant for the children, it was meant for the family and sometimes our village. So there was an enveloping vision as to how we would have modernized the society to make accessible government services through computers, and many families couldn't even think about buying books when we came in, but they were able to get a free computer and they had access to this world. And all of the institutions, we were able to put at least as many as we could have. We built, my friend likes to speak about building capacity. That is what we started in different ministries. The single electronic window and a host of other things, so that wherever you are, whatever hour of the night you were able to do it, you could go online and make applications, at least starting with the Ministry of Legal Affairs. And the vision was to move that forward. In terms of electronic payment, my friend will tell you, as he's an honorable man, the amount of work, not just in legislation, but the backbone to make that happen had gone in. But there was a resistance from one of our institutions, and I will not name it, that did not want electronic payment. A government institution, a constitutionally protected institution that did not want it. But we fought, and we were able to have achieved movement along there. So my friend once again inherited the work that we had done. we move forward. In relation to, my friend kept speaking about 400 billion spent and not a courtroom. I will deal with the court as a separate head. But let me just start by saying there is now a very unhealthy comfort between this government and the judiciary. I am saying that. I stand by that statement because somebody has to say it. There is now a matter before the court, and I will not go into it, except that the government, through its prime minister, for whatever reason, good or bad, chose not to, after the prodding of some of the finest and most decent and honorable people in this country, that there should be a proper investigation into our present Chief Justice under Section 137. The Prime Minister, as is his remit, has decided that he will not trigger it, and there is now a judicial proceeding to determine that. Now, the reason I speak of the judiciary is that that is one component of the awful rut that the People's Partnership met in 2010. We had, remember for for Chaguanas West, one of the first things we did is to lay pipeline into the heartland of Trinidad. And we did work in Tobago also in terms of water provision. 250,000 of our citizens got water for the first time, or at least reliable service for the first time under the People's Partnership.
Today is water for none.
Now we'll talk about water everywhere except in your pipes.
Right.
Now, Madam Speaker, I do not know if you enjoy driving around this country, or if you do, when you do fly in. Member for La Haqueta Talparo knows full well. Because we took a decision that the people of Trinidad and Tobago must share in the wealth of this nation. And we hear this thing about oil having gone to, member for Rebuttal, what, 150 was it? Yeah? But for the first time, this country saw a government that ensured that every community in this country was touched by its government. So that we had 200, member for Caribbees, 200 grounds that were prepared, fixed, lit, with exercise equipment and a host of other, we created spaces for the community to become communities again. Walking tracks, I've been reminded. Pavilions. And you know what? In those good old days, only 5 years ago, you would have gone around this country and you would have seen the hundreds and thousands of citizens enjoying the community spaces. Now there is almost a state of emergency curfew in this country. As soon as it starts to get dark, the only thing out there is the lights. Maybe we'll need some of the bulbs to ensure that when those lights go out, because there's poor maintenance. Minister of Public Utilities, maybe take some from the Minister of Finance and keep it, because I saw the cricket last night. Once that the lights gone out, I get frightened and worried. Yes. International embarrassment almost occurred down at the Taruba Stadium. Sorry, Brian Lara.
Because you were there.
No, I didn't come. I did not go.
They were there.
I never set foot there.
I did not go. Right? So that we have a situation where, thank you, Madam Speaker. And sometimes we forget as we on that. I'm happy you opened your mouth, Aventil West. Taruba Stadium. How much was the original cost, Europich?
165.
How much it ended up to be?
1.2 billion.
From 3 how much?
65.
To 1 point how much?
2 billion.
That is value for money.
And worse than that, when anything go wrong, they blame the UNC.
It was the tsunami shelter.
The rains that came the day before, people were worried they were going to blame the flooding on the UNC again.
Yeah.
Now, if they had to blame, take the blame. But oh gosh, man, let me be real a little bit now. Yeah.
Shelter.
This morning, the leader of the opposition, because there's so much to talk about, and very often we forget our history. Tobago, our beloved sister isle. Yes, I love Tobago. Not only people who live and born and grow in Tobago love Tobago. I want to make that very clear. And this kind of proprietary insolence you have, that because you're there, that everybody else, nobody else have a right to speak or love Tobago, forget about that. That's not correct. Yeah. Administration after administration. Start a hospital. How much was the original cost?
$120 million.
$120 million.
In 2000.
2000.
How many years? How many years?
16 years later.
Who finished it?
UNC.
Partnership. 800.
Member for St. Augustine, some of you are getting the impression that this is a question and answer between St. Augustine and Caroni East. Member for St. Augustine, you have my ear.
What she said?
Question.
Thank you very much. The point I'm making, so this demonizing of anything other than PNM has got to go. It has got to go. When, whatever name you call that hospital in Central, I born and grew up Freeport. I'm real happy that we have a, an institution that could meet the needs of the people of Central and South. But it was well placed. Because you know why it was well placed? We had Point Lisas.
Yes.
That generator of wealth, but one a dangerous environment with ammonia that could possibly leak, fires that could decimate the California community. Remember, for Couva South is well aware that the community is literally borderlining a nuclear bomb, almost. It got a little safer when ArcelorMittal left when you all arrived. But the point being, it was placed there with a burns unit. That was the thinking in that. And for children to have specialized, a center of excellence for them. Pediatrics. But not just that. Of course, it's not just a children's hospital. We put beds for if anybody on the industrial estate should fall ill. But if you go down there and you look across not far, what else do you see? What's the swimming academy?
The aquatic center.
The aquatic center.
The cycling
velodrome. Center. So that when we speak about, we built all of that. As the member for Couva South said, the only thing they put in that whole thing was the water in the pool.
Pool and the ribbon.
And I don't think any of us, did you get an invitation? No, I don't.
No, and the ribbon.
So let's put it in context. We have started to forget that the People's Partnership government did a lot for the people of Trinidad. But it was part of a larger vision that the leader of the opposition referenced this morning. So that you will have, and the intent also was to have first-class hotels close by and create a center where international sports teams or personalities will come here because we have warm weather throughout the year. So that persons can stay there, and if anything should happen, we had the Children's Hospital would also have had sports medicine member for St. Joseph. So that was part of that thinking. And when I hear the member for Laventil West talking about they want an airport in Central, he didn't know there was always an airport in Central?
Well, I don't know about Camden.
Camden. He didn't know, they don't know, and I don't blame you for your ignorance. What I blame you for is not trying to find out. Camden has been, when I was a child, right? I think the Americans used there sometime during the Second World War even. That's where the name came from, I think. So let's have a little sense of history. And the thinking behind it is to put an airport. It was not just for luxury flights, Not for the private jets alone, so that, like, when LeBron wants to come to Trinidad to check out our facilities down in Central, his private jet can land there. Helicopter takes him from there to the location at the aquatic center and that stadium. That was the thinking behind it. But the member for Chaguanas East took it, not just there, he took it off when he said, from cutting cane to flying place. Do we have any idea how much it costs to get a pilot's license in the United States? It is not cheap. And part of the vision of the People's Partnership was to modernize the society, because we knew full well that we needed to re-establish a different economy because we knew oil and gas will come to an end one day. And in the People's Partnership, we had persons who represented who cared so much about the environment, and we figured Trinidad and Tobago cannot be hypocritical to be one of the largest producers with a carbon footprint almost unequal per capita. We needed to change and fix that, but at the same time protect and create a new economy for our children so that they don't just go there to learn to fly. They go there so that they could be part of a universe that is uplifting. And instead of just flying out, they decide to learn to fly and to also put a drilling school so that we could export our technology. 100 years of oil experience. And who don't know it? Who doesn't know it? We have some of the brightest, best minds in this world. But what is most difficult in the last couple of years, you know what? Instead of going to Camden to learn, they have flown out of Trinidad and Tobago, possibly never to return. And that is the heartbreak many of us feel. So, money was spent on that. Money was spent on roads where there were only dirt tracks. The demonizing of box drains led us to have those floods because they didn't take care of the drainage when we had the floods of 2 years ago. My friend, the Minister of National Security, Minister of Local Government, Minister of Work, sat in an interview. I agreed with a lot of what they said about, we can't build on riverbanks and so, but blamed people indirectly for the floods in Bamboo Tree, and I will leave that for another segment, when they were not to blame. We have global climate change upon us, and it is unprecedented levels of rainfall, but not unpredictable levels of rainfall. And we cannot do those things that we used to do and fix up the whole riverbank the way we used to because the quantity of water coming on is several times greater than it used to be. Now, Madam Speaker, my friend spoke about the courts. And I wonder, with all these new fancy streamlining and all these glitzy statements about registrars and about how many more judges and so, is this country better served by a system of justice? No. Which is the ultimate, that is what you check, that is what you test. Let me give you a little horror story, Madam Speaker, that is so significant in its simplicity, but it demonstrates to us, in a nutshell, many of the things that are so wrong with this country. 1 week ago, and this has nothing to do with the court case itself, but it has to do with the process and the administration. A gentleman was committed on a non-violent offense in the magistrate's court in San Fernando. Bail was set by the magistrate properly, and apparently he didn't quite expect the committal to go to the assizes for trial. Unfortunately, he had a heart attack whilst in the precincts of the court holding bay, and he was taken immediately, and we thank and congratulate the police. They took him over to the San Fernando General Hospital, a building that was originally for an administrative center, not the waterfront issue, remember, for San Fernando West, an administrative center. And if you had ever had the misfortune of visiting the San Fernando General Hospital, the old one, hopefully not as a patient, and certainly hopefully not as a person visiting, you'd have seen that it was horrible, and nobody wanted to be there. And we took a decision, the People's Partnership Government, to take that administrative center and make it into a first world, I almost said hotel, but you should visit it, because one of the finest institutions you will find anywhere. Anyhow, they took this gentleman there for treatment. Whilst he was there, I'm instructed, they saw symptoms of microstrokes. Minister of Health, pay attention to this one. We are told, Terrence, listen to this, please. Yeah. That the MRI machine is not working there. But hear what? This fellow had the misfortune of having the heart attack after he's committed, but before the bail was processed. So he's in police custody. Since Friday till today, there's 24/7 police presence to keep this man in police custody. So I said, well, so the persons came to one of my juniors to see if we could assist. So I got involved in it, only to learn that the bail papers had taken several days to be approved. This is the man's sister who had taken his bail when he was first charged, had done everything, got the WASA receipts and everything up to date, but the process, Attorney General, lasted at least 2 days. And they were not ready to process the bail at that time, and therefore, he went into the hospital under police guard without the bail being processed. So I said, well, it's a simple fix. The family want to take him out of there because to get the MRI and to get proper medical in some private institution. So I said, no problem. So I went down to the registrar, who tells us, well, it's out of my hands. The papers, I have put it into an envelope. It is marked Commissioner of Prisons. I cannot touch it. The Commissioner of Prisons is waiting for this man up at the prisons, but he can't be transported. And they're telling us that the only way he could be bailed is that he must go to the prison for that to be done. Now, let me tell you how embarrassing this is as a lawyer of 30 odd years. All you needed was for that, what they call a committal warrant, and the approval documents, the bail, to be brought before the registrar or whomever there. And if that person says it's okay, get a justice of the peace to the hospital and have the bail taken. But because it was addressed to the Commissioner of Prisons, the registrar said they washed their hand from it. So we are caught in a catch-22, in a dilemma of the worst proportions. We cannot get the bail accessed because the man is in the hospital, and nobody wants to take responsibility. Now, the reason I raise this, and I'm not blaming the registrars, because they are now, as we are proud to say, qualified lawyers. In fact, I was surprised, one of our members of staff here is a registrar. Unfortunately, put in that position, without experience, and without the confidence to exercise their discretion. In the old day, before this fancy thing about registrars and how many people in the positions, the clerk of the peace would have simply called the police and said, bring back the documents here, and I will do what need be done if you bring the man before me. I today had to run away to go and see the registrar in the court. I had to go and see the chief magistrate to try and fix this thing, and nobody wants to take responsibility. So it tells you, no matter how glitzy and glamorous it appears on the face of it, when you have functional failures like this, it tells you a whole lot about third world mentality that we now have. So, Madam Speaker, there is so much more. In terms of the... Were you not embarrassed to... You're a lawyer first. You're also speaker. When we all saw a story in the papers last year of a high court judge in San Fernando who said, I am not going to put my hand in my pocket again to buy paper and adjourn the matter. So all this beautiful talk, and I don't blame the Attorney General, you know. I don't blame him. I blame those who are responsible for the judiciary. Because any amount of money, member for Rebuttal West, they ask for, your government gives to them. Any amount of money they ask for us, once you could justify it, we gave to them. And you're hiring how much? 380-something more people, and you're not buying paper for the court? How topsy-turvy is that? How ridiculous is that? When I hear my friends speak about they're painting a nice picture for this budget and everything, it's not a beautiful picture, it's a whitewash. It's a cover. And you know what I really wanted to hear more than anything else in this budget debate? I wanted to hear, forgive me for being the stuck record, but I'm on record being stuck on this. Campaign and party finance reform. Procurement legislation. Let me deal with procurement right away. Because I keep hearing about corruption in the last government. Well, if you have all the, whoever do wrong, only pay the price and go. Right? Let the system work. But there is a perception, what do you call it, Transparency International?
National, yeah.
What is that, 66% or how much perception of corruption? The people know, they know what's going on.
Yes.
2 years ago, there was the breaking of the soil, turning of the sod to build a car park across the road. Now, I don't blame business people. They see opportunities and they put their money and they take risks and they do what they have to do. And in fact, the Honorable Prime Minister himself was present at that turning of the sod. And the reason I raise this, I believe in coincidence, but I always believe there's a reason for coincidence. This building we're in, we were told not long ago, a couple of months back, is it? That here will be converted into a court, yeah?
Civil court.
When was that decision taken? When was that decision taken? Was it 2 years ago? Was it this year? I believe in the presumption of innocence, but I just ask questions. I remember a couple of years back, coming to this parliament itself, this elderly gentleman rushed off as fast as he could have, and he was hit by a car right across the road there. I jumped out of my vehicle. This man was bleeding from his eyes, his nose, and his mouth. And I comforted him. I did not believe that he would have made it, and I told him it's going to be all right. You need, sometimes in those moments, you need somebody to tell you it's going to be all right, even though nobody believes that it is. And I'm thinking, well, whew, but we really do need a walkover here. When was it a decision was taken to put a walkover here? 2 years ago? 1 year ago? I'm seeing the construction well advanced. Probably in time for when we move out of here and go to the Red House. I asked the question, is there a connection in the timelines of the decision to put a car park there? Is there a decision that is timeline equally to that to put a walkover in time for a government to take a policy decision to make a court to ensure that that car park will always be properly patronized? I ask questions because we have an election coming. I gave up leadership of the CUP. One of the hardest things I ever had to do, and I chose not to, was to ask for donations. You see this thing about party finance? Is at the core of a lot of the criticisms of corruption in the country. But as the Americans say, baked into our system. Because how can you run a campaign unless you have money? Where does that money come from? Not business. We are not like the Obama era where people give you, or Bernie Sanders to give you $13 and $5 and make up your million. No. We hear 500 million for an election. That comes from somewhere. And he who pays the piper calls the tune. And therefore, whenever a contract is given out after an election, the people will always feel that there's favoritism in that and we never get value for money. And that is why it was the People's Partnership government that took a decision that you may not be able to eradicate corruption, but you must do all that you can to suppress it and deal with it. Member for Caroni Central, thank you for the work that you did in leading that Joint Select Committee. So if they want to say that the partnership, UNC, whomever, was only about corruption, well, why would we have put the dagger that we all spoke about into the heart of corruption, which is called procurement? Is it true, Attorney General, that when you all came into office, and I know you had nothing to do with this, because I'm hearing today something slipped out here about advisors. Mm-hmm. You have a Minister of Agriculture, but the Prime Minister hiring an advisor on agriculture? Mm-hmm. I want to tell you, Mr. Ramadhar, the Minister of Agriculture is a good, strong, able fella. He may not be up to the job sometimes.
We know that. We know that.
but you're hiring advisors? Who else advising? Who else advised about the walkover? Who else advised about making here a court? Who else advised about turning sod to put or China? Right? So these are the things. So is it true that that committee that was supposed to do all the work, because the law is on the books, you know, but we needed the work done to populate the institution, to put the regulations and so develop it and put it in place. Is it true? Because I was told by a former member of that committee that you all starved them out until they resigned one by one by one till you had no committee and you had to reformulate the committee.
For 2 years.
For 2 years!
And 2 senior members of government.
We are in our 5th year, 5th budget, and we do not have procurement legislation in our place in Trinidad and Tobago. We spent 400 billion, they say everything up, but go down to the very university and see there's concrete on the ground. Go to the Children's Hospital, go to all the stadia, you can see physical evidence of what the People's Partnership did. And I am certain, because of the system, there will be corruption some way. But the Kamala Prasad administration under the People's Partnership, with the People's Partnership, took a decision to get rid of corruption, and we did so by creating legislation. And Speaker, party and campaign reform. You see, one without the other is far less useful. But together, they create, we heard about Mel Gibson and the Gladiator and everything else. Those two things are the warriors of our future. They will protect our children to ensure that the hundreds of billions, almost $1 trillion would have gone through this country from oil and gas for generations, that we should never have to worry about our children's future today. But something went terribly wrong, and we are the ones who started that process to fix it. Party finance reform is a must. It was promised by this government. We did work, remember, for Chabonas West had moved a motion here in this parliament to get it onto the agenda. When we went in the government, we moved on it. We had a joint select committee that did so much work, but none of that work was used to progress this thing. We keep hearing it come in, but they reach. Election reach. Money's going to spend, right? I don't know where it's going to come from. What I will tell you, though, there's a grave suspicion in my heart that it's going to come from our children's future. And the hypocrisy of many to talk, but never do the walk. Talk and no work on these crucial protectors, the vanguards of our future. Until I see that, I'm not convinced. All the beautiful courts you want to build and all the judges you want to put, justice will not be served on our children and our people unless we deal with those things. So we're dealing now, every time we come, well, I shouldn't say every time, but most times, there are a couple on the other side who are always threatening colleagues on this side. Police coming by, they're going to lock you up.
Lock up.
They're tipping off non-stop.
Reading warrants. They just read warrants.
They're reading warrants. Yeah? A casual conversation, I imagine, by one of our most honorable members to a colleague. They want to turn that into a criminal act. Yeah? So anything one side does is criminal and wrong, and whatever the other side does is holy and proper. Why in a budget debate where we are today, the leader of the opposition is on her legs and you have to get a notice we get in a local government election? When the Honorable Prime Minister had said over and over and over that this budget that come in is no election budget, he's a serious man, he cares about the future, like many of his colleagues, I am sure. But why is it that during a budget debate you will announce a local government election? Not to distract from, listen, whoever has an honest bit in their heart and in their intellect will tell you that the delivery of the leader of the opposition today was spectacularly good. And for a change, she didn't absorb the insults, the barbs, the arrows with poison tips that were shot at her repeatedly. A woman of intense grace and intense, what shall I say, forbearance. Yes. But today she dropped some wood on them.
It was deadly.
Deservedly, eh? And I say, wait a minute. It
was pointed.
What is, dropping wood? Yeah. Okay, whatever. She dropped some good language on you.
Yeah.
Right? So to distract from all of that, because I want to tell you, what was delivered on the other side was no budget, you know. That was a whitewash. What you heard today was a budget. Because, I don't think I earn enough, as you say. Yeah. So, let me tell you, sorry.
Member for St. Augustine, your original time is now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to wrap up.
I'll be most grateful, thank you.
Please proceed.
Yeah. I want to put on the record, if my friends think I need to sing for supper, right? Once again, he has deluded himself. I am not interested in the things he might be interested in. Right? He supplicates for his supper. So, I understand now my time is running out, and it may very well be, member for Laventille West, and I say so openly, may very well be my last contribution to our budget, right? I'm unafraid of it, but I'm not.
Yeah, his own too.
No, he'll do so in
No,
opposition.
they will
but
be voted out.
Madam, I generally enjoy my learned friends, but not certainly when we deal with matters of such importance. So, we're on the point. I want to speak about the constituency of St. Augustine. Khadija, yours too, you live right across the road? Yeah. Some people are just, that way. So, I have been honored to have been the representative for St. Augustine for the last 9, going on 10 years. And some of the most beautiful, wonderful people you will find in St. Augustine. Many of whom are unfortunate to have been born into poor circumstances, to have inherited family homes who were even poorer than, and unfortunately, they are who they are, where they are. Simple people, hardworking people, honest people. And there seems now to be this idea that you blame the victims. You blame the victims. That flood we had 3 weeks ago, in Bamboo number 3 in particular, and Bamboo number 1, member for St. Joseph, I hope he speaks about that. You have a situation where, as I repeat, unprecedented but not unexpected rainfall came. St. Joseph River broke its banks in 3 locations. Water came into the village. But suddenly you hear things about who throw stove, who throw car, washing, whatever, everything. There was nothing like that. It was just an enormous volume of water. And we had warned the Ministry of Works beforehand, months before, that the embankment of all of our rivers, because when we write, we don't just write for St. Augustine, but we send information to all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that do not just buttress the embankment to historic sizes and strength. You need to do much better, much go higher. And there was flooding. I heard ministers speak about there was no flooding in Greenvale or Oropun because of the work they had done. And I'm so grateful for that. But when it happened in Bamboo, somehow or the other, it turned out it's their fault. The people of Oropun, whenever it rains, they are worried. Beautiful community. But because of poor design and construct and lack of maintenance, they get flooded out regularly. Yesterday there was water in the roads throughout most of St. Augustine. Luckily, none went into the homes. So let us get away from this idea that you could get away, you are a government and you have to take responsibility. For even if people do wrong things, you have a responsibility to fix that. And as we move forward with global climate change, I ask the question, and I'm happy the Minister of Public Utilities is here. WASA is under your portfolio? Yes, honorably and happily so. When he took such great pleasure in this parliament, I remember, to say they will prosecute the farmers for abstracting water. Yeah. What were they doing? They were earning their livelihood. But that is insignificant to the more important thing, that they were giving us food security. They were taking water out of God's bounty from the river. They are using pumps, of course. I don't know if it would have been illegal if they used bucket instead. But the vastness of the work that they do required pumps. But they want to seize the people pump and charge them for it. That is your water. You want to charge them because the law says so. When those rivers overflow and go into the people's home, is that your water too? And it may sound ridiculous, but if you're taking responsibility to charge them when they take water, when your water come in their place, you should be held accountable. Now, the reason this is serious business, could you not work with the farmers in the dry season and in the rainy season, find a system so that there's, and I understand why sometimes they may want to charge because they say they weaken the embankment. Oh, good Lord, man. Could we not have a little system where they could put a little concrete something over so the hoses could go over, not to cut the embankment, but actually to strengthen to those locations and work with them and not against them?
Why the Prime Minister advisor didn't tell him that?
Well, maybe. Well, I hope he does, and I will not charge for that bit of advice. Madam Speaker, what are we doing? We're hearing about the eradication of Styrotex cups and little bottles and everything else, and so, which is really necessary. When every single year in the dry season we are told how low our water reserves are, that is bad enough. But Minister, we are told in the height of the rainy season that you have a terrible deficit. What are you doing about it? What plans do you have to redirect the floods so that we could put them into reservoirs, whether existing reservoirs or new ones? Don't tell me about highway to Toko. Tell me about water to the Navet. Tell me about how we are going to create an environment so when it rains unprecedented levels, that we're able to capture that so that when it comes that we have dry season, drought, we have a reserve of water. This is what the people of Trinidad and Tobago need. Don't tell me about how much percent we got now? 15%? Yeah? When they get caught with their pants down, they do the maths and realize, and as the leader of the opposition rightly said, you can't be talking about CPEP salaries that is less than the legal minimum wage. And it's when they do the maths, because everybody said, well, what a minute. Even with that increase, you're lower than the minimum wage now. So you had to come up with a brilliant argument, and I am sure it was contributed to that brilliance by the Attorney General and the Minister of National Security. No, these are very intelligent men I've worked with. I admire their intellect. And they, I am sure, would have come up with the idea, well, you have to argue it that way. Because on the face of it, there was no issue that they were raising CPEP salaries to above the minimum wage. They spoke about moving CPEP and URB salaries to 15%. And when it is added up, it came to less than minimum wage. You had a legal conundrum, and my two friends, I'm sure, sorted that out for them. Why is it? Because I keep hearing this thing about election, but no, we will not have an election budget. We are serious people. We are honorable people. We believe in the future. We do not play politics to the people. But the first salary they will get is when? December 1st. When is the election? Oh my good Lord. Is that possible that there could be a coincidence there? Are we to believe that this is not an election budget, as has been described by Hans Crumbs and so? It is nothing short of that, because there is no substance in it apart from that. And you believe that you are going to be able to entice people to sell their vote for $2.50 more per hour? Wow, what a contempt you have. But you know what? Sometimes it works. But it is now the duty of every right-thinking citizen to tell you, no more. We will not be fooled. We will not sell our future. Whatever the next election brings, it must bring a better governance to this country. Great is the PNM. You will continue to say that. Yeah? It is a great waste of time. It is a great failure. And the present PNM is a disgrace to the legacy of Dr. M. There is no philosophy underlying its movement into our future. The old PNM that many of us grew up with and respected, that has gone. I want to tell you something, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Prime Minister, when he speaks, I believe what he says, and he believes what he says. right? But there are advisors and others who really pull the strings, who make the decisions and then advise him what to do. And as a good leader, he will take that advice, but you need to know who your advisors are. Otherwise, you will be led by the unknown, the masked, silent persons who really have power in the society. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, I believe there's agreement that now will be a convenient time for the suspension. We'll come back at 6:30.